Hare Krishna.
Yasomati Nandana Rajavada Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hey, Mr. God. Jaya Radha Gopi Bala, Jaya Radha Gopi Jana Bala, Jaya Radha Gopi Jana Bala, Gopi Jana Bala, Shri Radha Gopi Jana Bala, hey, hey, Goranita, 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 Goranita. Gyantimirandasya Gyananjanasya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we had completed, at least, except for the last verse, we've thoroughly discussed all the first 5 verses. 6th verse we just mentioned. Now we'll begin, we'll do 7 and 8 today. So this is 7. Shat Krishna Nama Charidar Sitya Pravidyam Pito Patapta Vasanasyana Rochika Nu Kintwadaram anudinam kalos shaiva justa swadhi kramad bhavati tad ganamulak mantri. Translation: the holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue is of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet. It is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within the tongue, and this disease is gradually destroyed at the root. Very significant verse here. Mhm. Lord Krishna's holy name, qualities, pastimes, and so forth are all of the nature of absolute truth, beauty, and bliss. Naturally, they are very sweet, like sugar candy, which appeals to everyone. Nescience, however, is compared to the disease called jaundice, which is caused by bilious secretions. Attacked by jaundice, the tongue of a diseased person cannot palatably relish sugar candy. Rather, a person with jaundice considers something sweet to taste very bitter. Avidya, ignorance, similarly perverts the ability to relish the transcendental palatable name, qualities, forms, and pastimes of Krishna. Despite this disease, if one can, with great care and attention, take to Krishna consciousness, chanting of the holy name and hearing Krishna's transcendental pastimes, his ignorance will be destroyed and his tongue enabled to taste the sweetness of the transcendental nature of Krishna and such paraphernalia. And his paraphernalia. Such a recovery of such spiritual health is possible only by regular cultivation of Krishna consciousness. But what is being said here is that very carefully, with attention and with great patience, carefully chant the holy names of the Lord, clearly sounding the word. If you practice this carefully, the natural sweetness of the holy name will again appear on your tongue. So if we chant the holy name and we're in a hurry to get our rounds done, or we're thinking about something else while we're chanting, we will not be able to cultivate that natural sweetness. So very carefully, with great attention, speed will come as concentration increases. So when I was in Mayapur, I met one devotee who met one of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati's disciples who, his family, and not him himself, but his family, they were all Vaishnavas, living in the villages nearby. And he had spent some time with them, and they were telling him that Bhakti Siddhanta used this verse to teach how to bring back people to a clear chanting of the holy name. And he describes how he did that in a very practical way. Using your thumb on this finger, this section of this finger, he said they do 4 rounds like this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. 4 rounds like that. And by practicing that, he said that the natural sweetness will come out. You might think, wow, that might take forever. It does. It takes a while. But through that practice, one starts to hear clearly and very, very distinctly the sound of the holy name. And one can concentrate And as that concentration starts to develop more and more, the speed will naturally, and this word naturally is important, will naturally increase. So this verse is saying, with that careful approach to the holy name, and as it says here, simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, the word carefully is mentioned, a natural relish awakens within the tongue, and its disease is ground destroyed at the root. When we listen to Srila Prabhupada's japa tape, we see he starts off very slowly, but as he continues, the speed automatically increases. And then Prabhupada made another japa tape in a very mechanical way, chanting just the way I was chanting just now, to help us connect to the holy name. Sometimes we might think, well, that takes too long. My mind is not able to, accept that kind of austerity. But if you practice that for a while and do that, I'm not saying you have to do 4 rounds like that. But if you care, the word carefully is the key word here, carefully, that natural sweetness of the holy name will again arise in your chanting. And then you'll understand a little bit about the glories of the holy name. And as it increases, then one can actually develop a very continuous sweet taste in chanting the holy name. So this is mentioned here. When a man in the material world takes more interest in the materialistic way of life than in Krishna consciousness, he is considered to be in a diseased condition. The normal condition is to remain eternal servant of the Lord, Jiver Sarupoi, Krishna Nityadas. This healthy condition is lost when the living entity forgets Krishna due to being attracted by the external features of Krishna's Maya energy. The world of Maya is called Durasaya, which means false or bad shelter. One who puts his faith in Durasaya becomes a candidate for hope against hope. In the material world, everyone is trying to become happy, and although their material attempts are baffled in every way, due to their nescience, they cannot understand their mistakes. It's like you keep making the same mistake over, and you keep trying to do the same thing again to somehow or other get a different result. I even see devotees do that. They say, the same thing happens to me every day. I say, yeah, because you're doing the same thing the same way. If you change how you approach it, you'll get a different result. This is the way, because they say, habit is second nature. And when we fall into a certain habit that is a bad pattern, which is conditioned by our materialistic way of analyzing things, then we get stuck. I don't know, the olden days, I don't know if you remember, they used to have these big records. You put a needle on the record, and then it goes around like that. But sometimes there would be a little groove in the record, and the needle gets stuck, and it play the same thing over and over again. So we get stuck like that. And we keep doing the same thing in the same way, and we get the same result. So here, the word carefully starts to help us get out of that. And Prabhupada says this, people make the same mistakes all over again, can't understand why. People try to rectify one mistake by making another mistake. So what is that? That means if you apply a material solution to a material problem, you get the same problem over and over again, or you get a different problem. Prahlad Maharaj talks about that. He says, by applying material solutions to material problems, the solutions are more problematic than the problem itself. You create another problem, sometimes the problem is even bigger. Yeah. This is the way of the struggle for existence in the material world. This is a long purport. I'll read it. If one is in this condition, is advised to take to Krishna in consciousness and be happy, he does not accept such instructions. What do you mean, be happy? I know how to be happy, but they don't. This Krishna conscious movement is being spread all over the world just to remedy this gross ignorance. People are misled by blind leaders. I'll skip a little bit here. Such people never surrender to Krishna, and they oppose the endeavor of those who wish to take Krishna's shelter. When such atheists becomes leaders in society, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with ignorance. However, one must know that this jaundice the sugar can is the medicine for the jaundice. In the same way, Krishna consciousness, the chanting of the Lord's name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, is the only remedy for setting the world aright. Not just one of the remedies, it's the only one. Although Krishna consciousness may not be very palatable for a diseased person, Rupa Goswami nonetheless advises that if one wants to be cured of the material disease, he must take to it with great care and attention. You see that when those devotees who are advanced, they are very precise and very attentive to everything they do at all times. And that's the only way you can actually practice Krishna consciousness effectively. The mind has to be controlled and engaged nicely in the activities of devotional service, activated by the intelligence, which was the direction principle that moves one forward in Krishna consciousness. And Rupa Goswami explains enthusiasm. This means to endeavor with intelligence. The real disease is in the heart. If the mind is cleansed, however, if consciousness is cleansed, a person cannot be harmed by a material disease. To cleanse the mind and heart from all misconceptions, one should take to chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is both easy and beneficial. By chanting the holy name of the Lord, one is immediately freed from the blazing fire of material. And then Prabhupada mentions the 3 stages of chanting. We're still chanting with offense. After some time, we're lessening the offense, and then we come to no offense in the stage of pure chanting. And then one has to become aware of the 10 offenses and very carefully avoid them. And then it goes on, as soon as one is liberated from the blazing fire of material existence, he can relish the taste of transcendental life. And so Prabhupada goes on in this verse here. Krishna consciousness is compared to the sunshine, and Maya is compared to darkness. Wherever there is sunshine, there cannot be darkness. As soon as one takes to Krishna consciousness, the darkness of illusion, the influence of the external energy will immediately vanish. Krishna consciousness is directly coming, or the process of bhakti yoga, we might say, is coming directly from the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. It is the means by which the spiritual world operates. Everyone has love for Krishna, and everyone is serving Krishna in different ways. That is the essence of bhakti. And so that has descended into this material world through the Lord's mercy, through bringing it himself and also empowering his pure devotees to practice it and to teach it also. So Krishna consciousness is not some part of some idea that somebody came up with. It is the internal energy of Krishna itself. It's represented by Srimati Radharani. She is a personification of Bhakti. And because she is the highest principle of devotion to Krishna, she represents that principle which is perfect and complete. All other forms of spiritual elevation will never bring one to the stage of perfection. They bring one a little bit up, but they also leave one at a certain level. And then, of course, then because that level is not the complete perfection of the soul's existence, unless they go to the next stage of practice. In other words, if you practice karma yoga, you get a little bit detached from material. Then you go to jnana yoga, you practice karma yoga after practicing jnana, after practice jnana yoga after practicing karma yoga. Then in jnana yoga, you get detached from all material activities, but still there is no devotion to Krishna. And from jnana yoga, Krishna says, Bahunam jnanam mamante jnanamam prapadyante vasudeva sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabhaha. The jnani, after many, many births, cultivating jnana, comes to the point of having to surrender to Krishna. And that's his perfection of jnana. If he doesn't, then he falls back into the lower levels again. So, but one can take by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya right to the complete process, which is bhakti. Bhakti jnana vimalanti jnana bhakti. Boy, it's been a rough morning. Bhakti. What is that verse? Bhakti.
Bhaktyamam abhijanati.
Bhakti mam abhigyananti gyana satvataha. Okay. That's what happens when I didn't finish my rounds today. It's first day I didn't finish in a long time. Anyway, Prabhupada said, if you don't finish your rounds, you're in Maya. So maybe I'll get out of Maya before the class ends. Hopefully. Okay. So anyway, yeah. Yeah, and so bhakti is the principle of the soul's perfection and nothing less. So one has to come to bhakti in order to achieve the perfectional stage of life, which is, if one doesn't reach the perfectional stage, one has to keep evolving in the cycle of birth and death until they actually achieve that. Perfection has to become, because the soul can only return to its natural position in the spiritual world when it reaches its perfect state. Otherwise, it keeps evolving or revolving in the cycle of birth and death. So, and Prabhupada used to say, Krishna consciousness is not optional. He said the option to that is to suffer. That's all. We go on to the 8th verse, which is really one of the most powerful verses in this whole thing. Tanama rupa charitari sukirtananu smrityo kaman kramena rasanam manasi niyojya tistan vajaitan anuragi janu kami kalam ganam akilam ityupadeshasaram. So here, note the word the essence of all advice, is that one should utilize one's full time 24 hours a day in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braj, Goloka Vrindavan, Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of the devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Now this, as we mentioned, there are 9 stages of bhakti. This stage is on the platform of Ashakti, or actually, actually it's on the platform of Bhava. So bhakti is divided, sadhana bhakti is divided into 2 stages, which is Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti, which means Vaidhi Bhakti means simply following the rules and regulations and practicing devotional service under the guidance of these rules and regulations. Raganuga Bhakti is natural attraction to Krishna through developing a sense of spontaneity through following the rules and regulations. One moves higher up on the spiritual platform, and then bhakti starts to manifest itself as something natural rather than something just mechanical or rules and regulations. But in order to achieve that, there's a process. So here it says, one should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service. This stage usually begins on the platform of Ashakti and then goes gradually to Bhava and then ultimately Prema. So it's recommended here, it says also, one should reside in Goloka Vrindavan. So what does that mean? That means in the mind, or personally there in physical form, if one can do that. But one should cultivate the mood of Vrindavan by adopting an attraction for a particular resident in Vrindavan, one of Krishna's eternal associates. It may be in the category of his friends, the Sakas, his parents, Vatsalya Ras, or Madhurya Ras, the Gopis. Choosing one of these personalities, hearing about that person, reading about it, chanting the glories of that person, and praying to that person to guide them in the process of bhakti. But this is necessary because at one stage, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains that bhakti is only complete when one takes to spontaneous devotional service. Rules and regulations will only take one so high. But spontaneous devotional service is devotional service. Because the soul is by nature Nitya Siddha, Krishna Prema, Saruka Bunoi, Shravanari Siddhi Chitte, Koriye Udoi. The natural love for Krishna is there within the soul. It's not, we mentioned this so many times, it doesn't come from the outside. It's something that's not created. It's something that's revealed through the process of your devotional service. So this stage of Raganuga Bhakti develops when one takes up Raganuga Sadhana. The Raganuga Sadhana. Now, Srila Prabhupada mentions it continuously, but he doesn't give a systematic formula. The systematic formula is done by his devotees. And His Holiness Shiva Ram Maharaj has written 2 books. One is Spontaneous Devotional Service, and the other one is Further Knowledge of Spontaneous Devotional Service, both of them. He's very much eager to help devotees understand that this part of the process is required in order to achieve perfection. And he gives a very detailed description of what it is and how it looks within the ISKCON society, how we should practice it. So I would recommend those books. They're not very long. The books are less than 100 pages each one. It's a little red hardcover book. You can get a copy of those. And it gives a very detailed chapter by chapter explanation of how one adopts this process and how one practices the process also. But here are some indications. One should gradually engage one's tongue and mind in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord and following in the footsteps of a resident of. Now, one might say, well, maybe my eternal resident with Krishna in the spiritual world, my Istadev, or my, not Istadev, my Siddha Pranali, my, what is it called? What's the actual word? Siddha Pranali is one. My eternal loving relationship with Krishna is fixed. Everyone has an eternal loving relationship that's fixed according to your spiritual nature. Some of us may be in Vaikuntha, and some of us, because we follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Sri Vrindavan Dham, we can adopt that mood of Sri Vrindavan Dham, following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who teaches that whole process. And in that process, one maybe chooses a particular resident of Krishna, say Sri Dham and the Cowherd Boys, or we might say Lalita and the Gopis, someone may choose, one that inspires them. Because at that level of practice, one is already beginning to understand a little bit about their eternal nature. It's not formulated clearly yet, but they have a certain tendency towards a particular mood of worship that fits in one of the categories, either worshiping Krishna as a friend, worshiping Krishna as a parent, or worshiping Krishna as a lover, the gopis like that. So as that tendency starts to formulate, then you become somewhat eligible to practice this, and then the spiritual master also helps you in that and guides you along through that. And Prabhupada said, when the devotee is ready, the spiritual master appears and guides them. In Vedic tradition, one would take another spiritual master who was a Rasika, and they would work under that person, and he would take them to that process of Raganuga Bhakti, like that. And so Shiva Maharaj is giving us a very clear understanding. Sometimes devotees did that, they adopted that in a more pretentious and surreptitious way, which was not bona fide. In 1970, maybe a little bit later, there was a formulation of a club in ISKCON called the Gopi Baba Club. And devotees were dressing up as gopis, peacocks, actually putting on different kinds of decorations like that. When Prabhupada heard about it, he said, stop it. But that club went on for some time before Prabhupada became aware of actually. He said, this is simply pretense, it's sahaj, it's imitation. But it is bona fide when it's done according to the principles that are given in the Shastras and guided by the spiritual master. Like that. So this verse starts to illustrate this principle here. Since the mind may be one's enemy or friend, one has to train the mind to become the friend. The Krishna conscious movement is especially meant for training the mind to be always engaged in Krishna's business. The mind contains hundreds and thousands of impressions. Now that's not an exaggeration, because we use about 10 to 15% of our mind. The other 85% lies in the unconscious element of the mind. And in there, the impressions, experiences, and various types of desires sit within the unconscious mind. So the mind, what we bring up, just like you have a computer is a good example. What you bring up on the screen is what you work with when you're operating the computer. So what's in your mind is what you're working with. You create that as mental space and you act within that. But in the same way, the computer has, so much more information that is not up on the screen. But it's there. It's sitting in there and within the software, right? It's there. So in the same way, the computer actually was designed according to how the mind works. Someone really figured out how the mind works and created a machine just like that. And so it was quite genius. So the mind is like that. What we deal with is just a small part of what is there. And you sometimes you see, whether it's even in waking conscious, but especially in dreams, certain images, impressions, experiences come to the surface in the dream state, and one is in another. One is experiencing something. So these things are not coming from outside, they're coming from the unconscious mind, comes to the surface sometimes. So just to give you a little understanding of how the mind works. So Prabhupada says the mind, not only in this life, but in many, many lives in the past, these impressions sometimes come in contact with one another and produce contradictory pictures. In this way, the mind's function can become dangerous for the conditioned souls. Students of psychology are aware of the mind's various psychological changes. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tattve ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kontaya sada sada vibhavikaha. So, whatever is on the screen of the mind at the time of death, here's where you go. At the time of death, the mind and intelligence of the living creates the subtle form of a certain type of body for the next life. If the mind suddenly thinks of something not very congenial, that's at the time of death, one has to take a corresponding birth in the next life. That's a very critical time in choosing and determining where we go. So to prepare the mind for the time of death means to practice Krishna consciousness now in a serious way. And that way, when we get to that stage where the life is dissipating, then we can be able to focus the mind on Krishna and devote service. Prabhupada said, on the other hand, if one can think of Krishna at the time of death, he can be transferred to Goloka Vrindavan. The process of transmigration is very subtle. Therefore, Sri Rupa Goswami advises devotees to train their minds in order that they'll be unable to remember anything other than Krishna. Similarly, the tongue should be trained to speak only of Krishna and taste only Krishna Prasadam. Rupa Goswami further advises, Tishtan Braje, one should live in Vrindavan or in any part of Rajabhumi or the land of Vrindavan, which the Prabhupada talks about how big it is. When one makes Vrindavan his residence, he should take shelter of advanced devotee there. In this way, one should always think of Krishna and his pastimes. So Prabhupada further describes this, and so do the other acharyas. If one is not able to live in Vrindavan, then one can live anywhere but create the Vrindavan atmosphere within the consciousness. That means to be engaged in devotional service in the mood of serving Krishna in the mood of Vrindavan, as the cowherd boys, or his parents, or his gopis, developing that mood and following in the footsteps of a particular associate of the Lord. By following the footsteps of such associates and entering into the eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the personality of Godhead. In the transcendental realm of Braj, one should serve the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna with a feeling similar to that of his associates, and one should place himself under the direct guidance of a particular associate and should follow in his footsteps. That's what we were explaining. This method is applicable both in the stages of sadhana, spiritual practice executed in the stage of bondage, and in the stage of sadhya, God realization, when one is a Siddha Purush, or a spiritual perfected soul. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented as follows upon this verse. One who has not yet developed interest in Krishna consciousness should give up all material motives and train his mind by following the progressive regulative principles, namely chanting and remembering Krishna, his form, qualities, pastimes, names, and so forth. In this way, after developing a taste for such things, one should try to live in Vrindavan and pass his time constantly remembering Krishna's name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes under the direction of the protection and direct protection of an expert devotee. So here, this is the sum and substance of all instructions regarding the cultivation of devotional service. That also is said within the translation. So this verse here is the sum and substance, or the perfection of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada talks about the different stages, how these different stages develop from one stage to another, and so on. And he calls the perfectional stage Sampati Das, the perfection of life. And these are different stages of practicing the process of remembering. Remembering has 5 stages. The first one is called Anusmriti, and then Samadhi, Smarna Dasa, different stages of remembering. Samadhi is actually the actual goal. The yoga system, as taught by the yogis, also comes to the point of samadhi, like that. But that's not possible in this age. In this way, a neophyte can gradually develop attachment for the name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes. So study this particular purport, and you can see it even gives hints how to practice this. When one has developed these attachments, he can spontaneously serve the lotus feet of Krishna, even without following the regulative principles. The regulative principles take a backside because one is spontaneously attracted to the process of Krishna. This is called Raga Bhakti, or devotional service and spontaneous love. At that stage, the devotee can follow in the footsteps of one of the eternal associates in Krishna and Vrindavan. This is called Raganuga Bhakti. Devotional service and spontaneity can be executed in Shantaras when one aspires to be like Krishna's cows, or the stick or flute in Krishna's hands, or the flowers around Krishna's neck. That's nice, huh? You want to be a flute? Anybody want to be a flower? There's not a nice flowers. In Dasyaras, one can follow in the footsteps of servants like Chitraka, Patraka, and Raktak. In friendship, Sakyaras, one can be a friend like Baladev, Sridham, Sudam. In Vatsalya, characterized by parental affection, one becomes like Nanda Maharaj or Yasoda. And Madhurya Ras, characterized by conjugal love, one can become like Srimati Radharani, or her lady friends such as Lilita, or her serving maids, the Manjaris, like Rupa and Rati Manjari. Again, Prabhupada sums it up. This is the essence of all instructions in the matter of devotional service. And the last 3 verses talk about more how actually this plays itself in the practical way and one achieves perfection. So yeah, so this verse is very important. And it's really about meditating on the name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes in the mood of serving Krishna in Vrindavan under the guidance of one of Krishna's eternal associates. One can practice that at a certain stage. It's practically impossible to practice that on the lower stages. One has to get at least to the stage of Nishta and then move to the stage of ruchi, that sweet taste. But if we follow the process very carefully, we're guaranteed to make progress all the way up to the highest stage. And when you get to at least ruchi, then you're happy. Devotional service becomes a constant feature of happiness at all times. Even if the prasadam doesn't taste good, you're still happy. It doesn't matter. Okay. So the questions, yeah.
Thank you so much for picking this topic, especially talking about this words. I have two questions, and then we can see if we have time. I'll start with the first one.
Here comes the microphone.
You mentioned about Radha Bhakti and Sadhana Bhakti, and then there was one line which I heard multiple times. You also quoted: deserve before you desire.
Prabhupada talks about that, and he said, yeah, you should desire something beyond what you actually can achieve or something you don't deserve. So that's a certain mental analysis of, okay, I'm going to desire, but actually do I deserve? Am I qualified to desire in that way?
And that's where my question is now, when we spoke about that. So when we talk about desire, we are talking about Madhikar. So one may not have Madhikar, but isn't it the case until one desire and meditates on that and really yearn for
Yeah.
it, cannot deserve that.
Right,
So it's a
exactly.
cycle. Can I
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah. So Prabhupada said you should desire to go back home, back to Godhead. And so then you create the atmosphere by which you can deserve to go back home, back to Godhead. So you might say we take it in reverse, but the acharyas say both from both angles of vision. What he's saying in the initial stage is that some people desire something that is beyond their ability to achieve. But we can achieve ultimately perfection if we follow the process. So these statements apply to time, place, and circumstance, basically. And usually not only circumstance, time, place, and candidate. Yeah. Person's desires may be inordinate and they can't even, because it's way beyond their abilities to achieve. Therefore, they should first deserve before they can make that desire. But the acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, Krishna himself, says, our goals should be love of God, which means to qualify oneself to go back home, back to Godhead. It says that's the only goal of Krishna consciousness. Any intermediate goals are simply supporting the ultimate goal, which helps us come to the stage of perfection. But yeah, Prabhupada said very few people desire to go back home, back to Godhead. But he says when one does, Krishna becomes very pleased with that person and helps that person achieve that goal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can practice that also. Many people come to Krishna consciousness because this is wide open. We let anyone come, but people come for different reasons. They come to improve their material life. They come for some material gain. They come to get rid of material suffering. So if you come to get maybe also power, just like Vishwamitra Muni. He saw that Brahma Tejas was greater than Kshatriya Tejas. He was a powerful Kshatriya, king of the world, king of a portion of the world, not the whole world. But he was defeated by Vashishta, who had Brahman tejas. So he thought, wow, to be a Brahmin is more powerful, more influential. So he tried. And he actually achieved it after some time. But so people come to spiritual life for different material reasons. I want to be powerful. Ah, you want to be powerful? Krishna consciousness is the supreme power. Or I want good health. So practice Krishna consciousness properly, and it'll also help you in that area. I want success. I want money. I want position. I want power. Like Tirtha Swami was telling me that when he introduced one of his friends, who was a businessman, to Krishna consciousness, and the man was chanting, and he was really liking it. And he said, "I'm getting so many ideas how to increase my business." And that happens too, because Krishna consciousness means mind expansion. So it expands your mind in all areas. You can also become an expert demon by practicing Krishna consciousness. Probably, Charyas say this knowledge in the hands of the wrong persons is dangerous. It's dangerous, really. People can use the principles of devotion to Krishna to turn it into something else other than devotion to Krishna. So yeah, people come for different reasons. Or many people want liberation. Many people come to our movement because they want a better material life in the next life. Elevation to the higher planets. I can't be fully happy on this level of Krishna in this material world, so yes, Swargaloka. So yeah, all of these motivations are not, they're material. But usually people will get to a certain level, and by performing Krishna consciousness, they get that punya where they can fulfill these material desires, but they don't get Krishna. They get cheated in that way. If you want to add the ultimate principle of success and happiness, which is eternal, none of these other goals are eternal. Even liberation is not eternal. Then you have to come to the level of where the soul is actually existing, and the soul has pure love for Krishna. That's the only goal. It's the only goal. And even if you fail, still you get another chance in your next life to pick up where you left off. There's a verse, it's in the Bhagavatam, it's 1:517. It says, even if a person takes up Krishna consciousness and for some reason falls down, there's no loss. But if one takes up material life, even becomes successful in there, what is the gain? Because at the end of life, everything's lost anyway. So you can't lose. But one should have the right desire. One should desire to actually return back to the spiritual world.
Can I clarify one more thing?
Yeah.
When we hear Nam leads to Rupa, Rupa leads to Guna, Guna leads to Leela.
Right.
And again, I'm not trying to break this principle which Acharya has given. But can a Leela become a catalyst in chanting the Holy Name?
Can it become a catalyst in chanting? You can go directly to Leela, but Leela won't develop completely until you actually purify yourself completely. Each one is progressively more intense in its qualification of bhakti. When you perfect chanting of the holy name, it moves you to understand that Krishna and his form is not different. But understand it's not theoretical, it's realized. Theoretical understanding is not complete understanding. It's realized. So you actually when you look at the deity, you see Krishna. You don't see a deity. You see Krishna. That's to realize him in his form. When you're chanting the holy name, you're tasting the personality of Krishna present in the form of his name. When you get into charita, his qualities, then you actually understand these qualities are actually non-different than Krishna. You can experience Krishna through his transcendental qualities also. When you come to Leela, and then that's his pastimes. So how did the Goswamis write all of these Leela books on Krishna's Leela? They were in the Leela. Their intensity of the devotion took them into, and they went into the trance of bhakti by entering into these Leelas. They're actually seeing these things. They're actually participating in the Leelas. That's available. Prabhupada said, you can also become a cowherd boy, just like any of the other cowherd boys in Vrindavan. Or a gopi. Most of Lord Chaitanya's associates were gopis. Most of Lord Nityananda's associates were cowherd boys. Yeah. So you can decide where you want to focus your consciousness and then follow this process as recommended here. To follow in the footsteps of an eternal associate. Mm-hmm. And even if that person is not aligned with your Siddhadeva, that person will guide you towards that, to your Siddhadeva, to your actual internal mood and relationship and service to Krishna. There's a whole process of initiation into that, but it was so badly used that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati dropped it. It was being misused. And I've seen it even happen in within our ISKCON society. Devotees were trying to go up. They were forming all kinds of groups just to try to reach that level. And you follow some of other acharyas, they teach that also. But it's an authorized process, and the person has to be authorized, and the process has to be taught according to the level that is given, not simply someone concoct the idea, or has to follow perfectly. But it's easy, as you make advancement from one step to another, the next step becomes easier. If you look at the highest step from a low step, it looks like impossible. But the idea is to progressively move from one stage to another. And then the next stage becomes more easily attainable as you move forward step by step. You try to jump up the steps all the way from the bottom to the 10th step, you might fall and trip and fall all the way down. But if you go one step at a time, each step is easy because it's in connection with the previous step. Yeah. So it's a process. Yes, Mataji.
When we say going back to Godhead means that it's not a destination, but we are all the way. Like it was what
you're already back to Godhead right now. You just don't know it. Prabhupada talks about that. He says you can't be separated from Krishna. It's not possible. There's no question. The soul is never separated from Krishna. It's the consciousness that is separated, not the soul. You are always connected to Krishna at every moment of your existence. But when your consciousness is not connected, you see yourself separate. And therefore, you can't take advantage of that connection, but it's still there.
Actually start with the state of Krishna, which is the It's understanding right.
The Charyas give different. Some say it starts at Ruchi, some say at Ashakti. Usually, I think it's transition When ruchi develops to a higher stage, then it starts to develop. Then when a Shakti comes, that means completely fixed on attachment to Krishna. That attachment is natural. Then one can practice. I would suggest you take time and read these two books by Shiva Maharaj, expert. How he takes all of the instructions and the understandings given by the acharyas and formulates it into a beautiful, understandable way to practice Raganuga Bhakti. Because somehow in our society, we've always thought that we shouldn't touch that. But when people were using it in the wrong way, it got rejected. But it is part of the process, and it's required in order to achieve a perfection in devotional service. It must be practiced, but in the right way. Yeah. Okay, we got a question here and here. There's 4 or 5 questions here. You choose who you want. Okay. Hare Krishna.
In the 7th verse, I was just contemplating on this point that in the lecture to the Hare Krishna Mahamudra, Prabhupada speaks about that we are crying that, oh Krishna, energy of Krishna, be engaged in your service. That is, Prabhupada says that's a translation of the name of the video.
Yeah, that's actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He gave that understanding.
So, my question is that how can one cultivate the favorable service attitude throughout the day or throughout the time, so that when one starts chanting the holy name, so the holy name being pleased by the cultivation of one's service attitude, it flows.
Yeah. How to cultivate it? You have to be able to control that mind and direct the mind to the object of your activity, where you put your full concentration. Sometimes we say body, mind, and words all have to be engaged in the activity. Sometimes the body's there, the words are there, but the mind is doing something else. That means we're not fully attentive to the activity. So the mind is the most important. Bring that mind fully into the activities that you're performing, and gradually the body and the words will necessarily follow nicely. It's really fixing the mind on Krishna or on the activities of devotional service. And to do that really takes, to qualify to do that really means you should practice chanting attentively. If you're in attention when you're in your chanting, you'll also be attentive in your day-to-day service. To practice attention in your chanting. That helps to fix your mind on your activities. And you also pray, my dear Lord, please allow me to serve you in such a way that I can please you by my service. We pray for the Lord's mercy also. Give me the intelligence how to serve you nicely. Give me the ability, give me the facility, whatever I need to serve you nicely. Yeah. We can pray like that. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, thank you for such enlightening class. Maharaj, my question is on the holy name. So, in nectar of devotion, we hear that the holy name can destroy the teacher and the Buddha. So, trying to understand about the subconscious mind, which you're talking about, so many desires and impressions,
Yeah.
which has been coming from millions of lifetimes. So in the Vedic sadhana bhakti, when we are chanting the name of Krishna, should there be a conscious effort to eradicate those impressions and desires, or the holy name, we know that the holy name power is capable to do anything, but should there be a conscious effort to do so?
Purification starts on the gross level, and then as it continues, it goes to the subtle level. So just like no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meeting, no gambling. So we're following that. So we have become somewhat purified from these activities. But the subtle aspects of these things still exist within the mind in terms of desires. So if we continue to chant and practice the process of devotional service, then gradually these other more subtle aspects also become uprooted. So and the process will continue to work until perfection, if you follow very carefully. But one has to be very attentive to also understand the attachments that you have, so you don't allow them to grow simply by feeding them. Well, one has to see, oh, this is an anartha, this is not favorable for my bhakti. So I should not put my time, attention, or energy in practicing this, So that helps, but ultimately the process, it says, when you begin your bhakti, you put the seed in the ground. The seed is planted by the spiritual master. The ground is the process of devotional service. Then the watering process comes, that's hearing and chanting. As the watering process comes, and one cultivates the plant starts to grow, and that's the bhakti is growing, actually. But then at the same time, there may be weeds that grow up alongside of the plant. But one should be aware of these weeds and somehow, without destroying the plant, pull out these weeds so they don't kill the plant. And that's mentioned, we talked about that. Maybe we didn't talk about that. Puja, Pratishta. It's in a 19th chapter, Madhya Lila, verse 161. Prabhupada's purport. These are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to, I think it's Sanatana Goswami or Rupa Goswami. I think it's Sanatana Goswami. He describes at least 6 of these, what we say, weeds or anarthas that can easily grow up. As you make advancement in Krishna consciousness, you might start thinking, I am advanced, and then you develop a sense of pride. And in that pride, you commit offenses to other devotees, thinking you are more advanced. You minimize the importance of others, you think you're better or more advanced. That's a weed. Then you want some kind of worship, or you want people to honor you or something. Or if you're getting honor and then you don't get it, then you think, what happened? They open the door to the car for me every day, but they forgot today. What happened? Hare Krishna. So all of these weeds can come, where's my umbrella? Where's my garland? What happened? So, when we start making advancement, it's natural. And Krishna arranges for the devotees to receive some reciprocation. And because it's inspired by devotees also. So devotees like to honor and respect other devotees. But then we can also get attached to that and think we deserve it. And then that's a weed. And if it grows, it can turn into an activity that becomes offensive towards others, or becomes a sense of pride and arrogance that can develop. And then we want attention, we want some remuneration. I'll give you an example. There was one very advanced devotee, and he would travel around. His name was Rupa Kaviraj. Yeah. And he was expert at, really expert at the Shastras. And he would give discourses, and many people would come to hear him. He was almost on the platform of Baba. Hi. So he was there, and he was giving a lecture one day. It was just beginning, and one very elevated Vaishnavi, her name was Krishna Priya, I think. She came to sit in his lecture, and she was attached to chanting. She would chant all the time, constantly chanting the holy name, constantly. So she came and sat towards the back and started to listen, but she was so addicted to chanting, she couldn't even stop. It was impossible for her to stop chanting. So she was chanting while she was listening to his class. He noted that, and he saw that, and he said, "Oh, are you actually listening? You come to listen, or do you come to chant?" He started to criticize her for what she was doing. She remained calm, humble. She didn't say anything. She didn't try to defend herself. But he committed an offense to her by attacking her in that way. He was so proud. He's thinking, well, everyone should listen to my class. She was listening, but he couldn't perceive it for whatever reason. And then it said that he fell down from his position to a lower stage of bhakti because she was a pure devotee and he offended a pure devotee. Sure, if you offend a pure devotee, then that is maha aparad. So that's an example how one who's making advancement develops this type of subtle pride, and something doesn't go their way because based on that pride, they can say something, do something, and fall down because of that. It says as you make advancement, the subtleties of bhakti become more and more harder to detect. And so one has to be very diligent to know how to avoid these different anarthas, which are not always apparent, but still present. That's why the best way to do that is to serve the Vaishnavas and to serve the Vaishnavas to please the Vaishnavas. That's the best way one can overcome these more subtle desires for name, fame. It's called pratishta, what's it called? Puja, pratishta, all of these things. The desire for worship. So does that help answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept this is actually lotus space. Maharaj, I have a question. At the neophyte stage, how one can attain or reach the mode of Raja?
In what stage?
Neophyte stage.
How can one reach what?
Reach or attain the mode of Raja.
The mood of what?
Raj.
Well, it mentions here, you have to practice that. Right, hear Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Hear them regularly. Chant Krishna's name. Develop a mood attachment to thinking about Krishna, remembering Krishna, chanting Krishna's name. Practice. Your practice is actually bringing out what's already there in the soul. When the practice reaches a certain stage, it becomes natural. But it's just like how bhakti works. In the beginning, you're following the rules and regulations in order to practice. And after a while, when you've developed an attachment for the whole process, the rules and regulations are no longer necessary. You're spontaneously or naturally attracted to the activities. Same way. And so just practice. Practice remembering Krishna and read his pastimes. They're there in the books. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has performed many of the activities. It's all mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Read and study Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's the sunam bonum of all transcendental knowledge. Yeah. That's why when these books are here, come to the classes. All of these things help build that consciousness. But focus on Krishna and Vrindavan. I mean, there's Nrsingadev, there's Ram, and we're also attracted to all of the other Leelas also. Bhakti Vinod Thakur talks about, we worship Lord Nrsingadev so he can bring us to Vrindavan. By destroying all the obstacles in the path of achieving Vrindavan. But they're in the supreme or the initial commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam is Sridhar Swami. And Sridhar Swami's Istadev is Nrsingadev. So he worships Nrsingadev, but he's actually the person we follow for learning Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all about Krishna, ultimately. Yeah.
Thank you.
That becomes a little difficult. Oh boy, I like God in all of his forms. But we're followers of Lord Chaitanya and he worships Krishna. But even if your attachment is to other forms, then that will manifest also through your worship of Krishna. Yes. Actually, we're not worshiping Radha Krishna. This is not Radha Krishna here. This is Lakshmi Narayan. Because you don't worship Radha and Krishna in awe and reverence. You worship Krishna and Radha and Krishna in spontaneous, loving, devotional service in the mood of Vrindavan. So the deity presents themselves as Radha and Krishna. Only when you reach that stage of spontaneous devotional service will you understand Radha and Krishna here. Right now we're in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. But Prabhupada said, don't try to jump on the back of Krishna. Because you know, you're not ready for that yet. But when you're ready, then you can do it. So this is Lakshmi Narayan worship. Deity worship is Lakshmi Narayan. But Krishna is only worshipped as an equal or as an inferior in Vrindavan. He's never seen as a superior. He's always either on an equal level with his cowherd friends or with the gopis who, you know, they chastise him when he doesn't do the right thing. Hey, you're hanging around with those cowherd boys. You're acting like them, you know. They're all buffoons. Lalita said that. So you can't somehow or other imitate that, but that's there in that mood of devotion. Yeah.
Yes, concluded question. What would the devotee Chantarasa, devotee Chantarasa and Asarasa, Devananda Krishna is like Sudhiri in Vrindavan?
Do they exist in Vrindavan? Yeah. All of the 5 rasas exist in Vrindavan.
In Vrindavan they have the...
There's different commentators will say Shantaras is not there, but it is there. Sometimes we say Shantaras is for the Mayavadis. But that's worship of Shantaras on this level of material existence. But yeah, Shantaras is there. The land, the rivers, The trees, they worship the Lord in Shantaras in Vrindavan. The rocks.
So they still feel that Krishna is inferior to them. For example, the fruit, Krishna has all the fruit. Krishna gives a lot of respect to the fruit. So
Yeah.
the fruit may have Krishna is.
Well, either equal or less. Whenever there is a section of Vrindavan, I'm going to change the whole subject now. There is a section of Vrindavan where they worship Krishna as superior. And that's based on the pastime of Nanda Maharaj when he was captured by the servants of Varuna and was taken to Varuna's abode. When Krishna came to rescue his father, Varuna started to worship Krishna. Then Nanda Maharaj and the cowherd boys who were there, they saw that Krishna was being worshipped in that way. So there is a particular mood of that worship that is there in a small section of Vrindavan, in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. But that's really not indicative of Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna is in the mood of, he's more and less of being worshipped in a lesser position. He's attractive. He's the most beautiful boy there. Everything about him is attractive. But he's my son. I have to chastise him and I have to correct him. He's my lover. He doesn't do the right thing. So when he goes to other girlfriends, then I have to straighten him out. So, he's my friend. So that's more on the equal level. Some cowherd boys play the role of almost Vatsalya Ras to Krishna, such as Balaram and Ujjwala and maybe Sridham also. They worship Krishna as cowherd boys, but they're in the mood also of parental affection at the same time. What is that cowherd boy? Oh, what's his name? Sudam. No, not Sudam. Huh? No. Subal. Subal sometimes assists Krishna in his pastimes with Radharani because he looks just like a gopi. He's so sweet looking. He's actually in the male form, but he's so beautiful. He has that complexion. Subal, yeah. Yeah. So read about these. This take your mind off, from all of the garbage on the outside that we get interested in. Krishna is interesting. The whole scenario of Vrindavan is so complex. You can't exhaust it in millions of lifetimes. There's so much there. Tell you a story. All right, Krishna just killed a demon. And all the cowherd boys get around Krishna. Wow, Krishna, you killed that big demon. And yesterday, I can't do that. And yesterday, I beat you in wrestling. And another boy said, yeah, I stole his lunch and he was crying. I can't kill that demon. How did you kill that demon? Krishna's not saying anything. He's standing there. And they're all trying to figure it out. So then one boy says, yeah, it's his mother. She gives him a demon-killing mantra. Every time he leaves the morning, he has that power. He chants that mantra. Another boy says, not exactly like that, but it is his mother. She puts these armlets and amulets on his legs, and he has all this power. It's invested there. So they're all going back and forth trying to figure out how Krishna killed this demon. And then Krishna says, you want to know? Yeah. They all get around, they're all listening with eagerness. When I was born, there was a great sage that came to see my father, and he had a private meeting with my father. And this was Gargamuni. And he said to my father, this boy, you son of yours, he is as good as Narayan. And actually, he even said, He is Narayan. So then he turns to the cowherd boys. He said, "You want to know? I'm God." And they're all laughing. He's God. He thinks he's God. And they're just laughing and laughing. And the laughing goes, it happened at a place called Hashyavan. Hashya means laughter. It's a place in Vrindavan as pastime. They're all laughing and Krishna's laughing. And finally, Krishna said, "All right, let's go play." All right. Nobody cares whether he's God. And they don't believe it if he says it anyway. But he's so attractive that everyone simply focuses on Krishna. That's Vrindavan. Yeah.
You just mentioned that our soul never parted from our soul is never got away from Krishna. Is our soul is given.
The soul cannot be separated from Krishna. Just the mind gets in the way and creates this false sense of separation. That's all.
So you just mentioned that our consciousness came from not our soul. Right?
Yeah. That's called polluted consciousness. Consciousness in its natural state is pure. It's like a pure water. But water can get dirty with mud and various things, but you can refilter the water through a process of purification, bring the water back to its clean state again, even after it gets dirty. So when we come to the material world, we get dirty. And then we have to refilter our consciousness and bring it back to a pure state. When the mind is in its pure state, it reflects the nature of the soul. Then one can see Krishna everywhere and everything in Krishna simultaneously. That's pure consciousness. But consciousness is pure, and consciousness never gets contaminated. But it appears to get contaminated. The analogy is, if you look up in the sky, you see in the sky there are clouds, there are birds, there are airplanes, but none of these things touch the sky. They look like they're in the sky, but they don't touch the sky. Simply, these material thoughts don't touch our consciousness, but they appear to be covering our consciousness. So therefore, that's why this whole material world is simply a dream. That's all. We're dreaming we're brahmachari. We're dreaming we're a man. We're dreaming we're in Detroit or Farmington Hills. These are all parts of the dream. The reality is the conscious, you're always with Krishna at all times, but you're not able to perceive that because of the contamination of the material. And you can't drink the water because it's contaminated. You filter the water, then you can drink it.
So with the reincarnation happens, consciousness shifts from one body to another.
The soul, the mind, is the force that drags our consciousness from one. Because the mind still has material desires. As long as you have material desires, then mind will bring you to another situation to, again, try to fulfill those material desires. Yeah, it's the mind. He's the rascal. Yeah. Prabhupada said, I have a mind also. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
As we talk about the consciousness, the one question. Now the book I read from Hari Swami. Now the body of the book. Where he is saying that
Who?
Maharaj Swami.
Mahaniri, yeah.
He said that when we say the heart, it is not the heart which from from the blood.
Right.
But there is one heart is emotional and then there is a chief. Chief
Right.
one is spiritual. So I want to understand.
The heart is the seat of desires, and the mind is the force by which those desires come to the surface. That's all. So the heart, yeah, the heart is the seat of desires. That's the actual, that's chitta. But you can purify the heart and make the desire spiritual. Then that's a pure heart. Yeah, it's the emotional body of the living being. Yeah, what you described according to Mahanidhi's explanation is correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's where your desires sit within the heart. That's why sometimes we say Cheto, Darpana, Marsi. We cleanse the mirror of the heart, cleanse the mirror of the mind. Both translations are accepted. The heart and mind is sometimes seen as one, and sometimes seen as something separate. But ultimately, it's one. Gradually purifying the mind, gradually purifies the heart. Gradually purifying the heart purifies the mind. Through the process of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Krishna Smaranam. Yeah.
And one more thing.
Did you get that one?
Yes.
Okay. You have to realize that the soul also has a heart, a mind, an intelligence. Everything that the physical body has, the soul has also. But it's pure.
Maharaj, we talk about the sun. We started with Vairi, which is like our practice. So is that sadhaka really worry about the spontaneity? Because spontaneity is the product of this practice.
Right.
So is that one has to just visualize at which stage I am? So the person like me doing in the canteen, I have to focus on.
Yeah, you focus on your activities, but you should also know the goal. If you don't know where you're going, then your activities may not take you there. That's why we explain all of these higher stages, so we can get an indication where we are and how we can progress to the next stage, and ultimately reach the perfectional stage. Yeah. So we focus on where we are. Yeah, you can't focus on where you're not, but you should know about where you're going to go. You're still here in Farmington Hills, and you want to go to New Vrindavan for a vacation. So you're not there yet, but you make your plans to get there. Make your plans to go back home. But still, you have to work where you are. Right? Practical. Okay, so we can stop there because we're running out. Oh, okay. One more question back there. You had a question too? You can ask me when at the house.
So I just want to clarify about what Bhagavad Gita said, and maybe this is to understand. Our soul is never separate from Krishna. That is a concept, but we are in the material realm experiencing the.
It's an illusion of separation, that's all. You think you're separate. How can you? You're part and parcel of Krishna. The idea that you conceive yourself separate is the illusion, and therefore you act in that mood of separation. But separation is just the covering, which is the wrong consciousness. That's all. It's a covering. The separation means you identify with something that is not you. We identify with this body or something about the material, our material existence.
At the time of changing the body, the soul goes to the consciousness to the next body, right?
Right.
Body, the soul is in the physical realm, experiencing
It's being it's being carried by the mind, the intelligence, and the false sense of self. That's the transformer or the transmitter. When you die, the physical body is finished and the subtle body still exists. And it brings you into the next birth, according to its desire. That's right. You see, everybody has a different body. That means we all have different desires. And we have different parents, we have different places of taking birth. All of these are the intricacies of our material desires. And Krishna doesn't even describe that. He says, karma is so complex, you can't figure it out. Why one person, sometimes twins are born to the same parent at the same time, right? But still they're different. You can always find something different even within exact twins, I know one devotee, he's married to one lady. She had a sister, they were twins, and she's a devotee and her sister's not a devotee. So although they have similar karma because they were born in the same situation, but similar doesn't mean exact. And to get right to the point, each soul is unique. Just like they say in the material sense, there's no two fingerprints that are the same. There's no two snowflakes that are the same. There's no two leaves on any tree that is the same. Similarly, there's no two souls that are exactly the same. That's why Krishna wants to exchange love with each and every soul, because each and every soul is unique. That's a fact. There are similarities all the way up to almost exactness, but there's always a slight element of in the difference in each person. Each person is unique, both material and spiritual. Both of that, they're in both categories of existence. Hare Krishna. But we want to connect with Krishna, and therefore, that amalgamates all the differences. Srila Prabhupada ki.